My wife cheated on me and demanded $2 million to sign the divorce papers, or she would keep me married forever. So I gave her the legal battle she deserves. We had been married 8 years when I found out Luna had been seeing someone for most of the last one. I did not scream. I did not throw anything. I sat on the edge of the bed with my phone in my hand, and I felt the floor drop out slowly, like an elevator going down 1 inch at a time. And when it finally stopped, I told her I wanted a divorce and that I would be fair about it. I meant it. I had come off a good year at work, we had savings, and I told her I would split everything down the middle and add extra on top so she could land on her feet. She looked at me the way you look at a waiter who brought the wrong plate. She said, "Fair? You think fair is half? I gave you 8 years of my life. I want $2 million, and until I get it, I am not signing anything." I told her we did not have $2 million sitting anywhere. She said, "Then sell something." That is not my problem. You cannot get divorced unless I sign, and I will not sign for less than 2. That was the whole plan. She believed her signature was the only door out, and she was standing in front of it with her arms crossed. My lawyer was a man named Romeo, a quiet guy in his 50s with a desk so clean it looked unused. He drew up the settlement exactly the way I asked, 50-50 plus extra, and he told me straight that it was more than the law would ever hand her. I said I did not care, I wanted it clean. He sent it to her attorney, a man named Dennison, and 11 days later, it came back to us in the same envelope with $2 million written across the top in red marker. Nothing else. No letter, no notes in the margin, no counteroffer. Just the number, big enough to run off the edge of the page. Dennison called Romeo and apologized, which I later learned lawyers almost never do. He said his client would not listen to him. I sat at my dining table that night looking at the red digits, and I could hear my own pulse in my ears. Then the text started. "Enjoy being married to me forever, babe. I can do this for 10 years. I have nothing but time." She had already moved in with the guy, Chul, and she was telling everyone we knew about her wonderful new life while refusing to end the old one. When I asked her to please just sign so we could both walk away, she wrote, "You want freedom? Freedom costs $2 million. I am not a charity." I added the car and another lump sum on top of the fair split, thinking generosity would break something loose in her, and she wrote back, "Do I look like I work for tips? $2 million or I die married to you. Your call." She told me the affair was my fault for working too much. She told me the $2 million was back pay for the years she wasted. She said that to my face in daylight without blinking. And every time I thought the line was finally close, she moved it. That is the part that broke me down more than the money. It was never about landing on a number. It was about watching me reach. The worst one came in the spring. My phone buzzed at 11 at night and it was her. Direct, not through the lawyers. 1.5, I will take 1.5 and we are done tomorrow. Final answer. I read it 4 times, standing at my counter with the tap still running. $1.5 million was still absurd, still more than any judge would ever give her, and I did not care because it was movement and I had not seen movement in months. I called Romeo that night. He picked up sounding like he had been asleep. I told him to draft it, tonight if he could, tomorrow morning at the latest. He was quiet for a second, and then he said, "She has done a version of this before. Do not celebrate yet." I told him I heard him. I did not hear him. In my head, I was already gone. Romeo took 4 days to draft it because he wanted every line sealed so tight there was nothing for her to pry at later. I signed my part standing at his desk without sitting down, put my name on every page, shook his hand like it was over. Then I drove home and let myself picture the next part of my life for the first time in a year. A small apartment somewhere quiet, clean counters, nobody yelling, cooking for one, which sounds sad and honestly sounded like heaven. Waking up on a Saturday with not one person in the world angry at me. I held that picture for 6 days. On the 6th day, Romeo called and said my name in a way that told me before the words did. He said she did not sign. I asked what she wanted changed. He said nothing. She crossed out $1.5 million and wrote $2 million plus the house in the margin. Then my phone buzzed while he was still on the line. It was her. "I changed my mind. You took too long. Price went up. Consider it interest." Romeo told me the rest because Dennison had told him. She had been laughing when she wrote it. She sent that fake offer knowing I would call my lawyer in the middle of the night, knowing I would sign everything, knowing I would start pricing apartments. She let me sit in that for almost a week on purpose, and then she took it away, and she thought it was funny. I hung up and sat down at my dining table, and the house was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator running, and something in me went still, not angry. Anger makes you fast, and I was not fast. I felt clear, the way a road looks when fog lifts off it all at once. There was no number, not 2 million, not 1.5, not 5 million, if I had it in a bag. The money had never been the point. Being stuck was the point. She wanted to wake up every morning knowing I could not move, could not close the door, could not breathe without her permission, and she liked that better than any check I could write. I had been trying to buy my way out of a cage from the person who liked owning the cage. I slept better that night than I had in months. Not because I was happy, but because I was done. The next morning, I called Romeo before coffee and said, "No more offers. I am done asking. Tell me what else exists." There was a pause on the line, and then he said the sentence that ended the whole thing. He said, "You keep thinking you need her to agree. You do not. We can file for a contested divorce. A court can end this marriage without her signature. She is not holding a door shut. She is standing in front of it making noise." I asked him to say it again. He said it again, slower. He told me to come into the office the next morning so we could go through it face to face. And when I got there, he had a coffee waiting for me, which was the first thing anybody had done for me in a year without wanting something back. He sat me down and laid it out flat. He said if one spouse refuses to participate, the court does not shrug and declare you married forever. The court finishes it. It takes longer. There are more hearings, more filings, more waiting. But a refusal is not a veto. It is a delay. Her signature was never a key. It was a rumor she had been repeating until I believed it. Then I asked him the question I did not really want the answer to. I asked why he had not pushed this on me months ago, why he had not grabbed me by the collar and made me listen. He did not get defensive. He opened a drawer, pulled out a stack of printed emails, and slid two across the desk. Both were from him. Both were months old. One was dated 4 days after the red marker came back. Both of them explained a contested divorce in plain language. The process, the timeline, the fact that her signature was not required. I sat in his office and read emails I had already received, and my face went hot because I remembered them. I remembered seeing them in my inbox. I had skimmed them and gone straight back to the only question I could hold in my head, which was how to make Luna pick up a pen. I was so locked onto her signature that I could not see the door standing open beside it. Romeo did not rub it in. He said, "You were not ready to hear it then. You are now." Then he leaned forward and told me the part that changed the shape of everything. He said, when a judge divides assets, the judge follows a formula. Earnings, contributions, length of marriage, not a number written in marker. And he said, that figure is going to come in below what you already offered her. She turned down her best deal a year ago, and she does not know it yet. I asked him to repeat that too. He did. The 50-50 split plus the extra, plus the car, plus the lump sum was more than the law was ever going to produce for her. I had been generous because I wanted out. A judge would not be generous. A judge would be accurate. I asked whether the affair helped me. Romeo shook his head and said cheating would not tip the math in our area. The court would not punish her financially for it. But he said something else that stayed with me. He said, when a judge sees one person negotiating in good faith for a year and the other writing ransom numbers in marker, that is not a legal penalty. It is a human one. They noticed. I told him to file it. All of it, whatever it took. He nodded and then held up a hand and said, understand what is coming. She will be furious. She will stall. She may skip dates. But the clock is running now and she cannot stop it. And every week she drags this out is a week she is paying Dennison to lose. He looked at me and said, it gets loud before it gets quiet. I said I had been patient for a year and she could handle a few months of reality. He almost smiled. I signed what needed signing and walked out into a parking lot that looked exactly the same as it had an hour earlier, except I was standing in it differently. That night I made dinner, sat down, and ate an entire meal without touching my phone. Leftover chicken and rice, nothing special, and it was the best thing I had eaten in a year because I was not chewing while waiting for someone else to decide my life. 2 days after the filing went through, Romeo called sounding almost amused. He said Dennison had phoned him and apologized again, and reported that his client was, quote, not taking this well, and asked whether I would consider returning to negotiation. Romeo told him we negotiated for a year and his client treated it as a sport and that we would see him in court. I asked what not taking this well meant exactly, and Romeo said, it means she just found out the wall she has been leaning on is a curtain. Luna called me that night. I almost let it ring, but I picked up, and the second I heard her voice, I knew something had shifted because the smugness was gone. She sounded rattled, like someone who had just been shown a rule she did not know existed. She said, you cannot take me to court without my permission. I never agreed to this. I never signed anything saying you could. I stood at my counter and said, that is the whole point, Luna. You never signed anything, so the court will do it without you. There was silence. Not a thinking pause, a silence with nothing behind it. Then she hung up, and I realized it was the first conversation in a year where I had the last word. She skipped the first court date. So did Dennison. Romeo and I sat in an almost empty room while the judge made a note and set a new date. And Romeo leaned over and whispered, she thinks that if she does not show up, it cannot happen. happen. She is going to test that theory exactly once. At the rescheduled hearing, they both came. She walked in with her chin up and her arms crossed like she had come to correct everyone. The judge noted her failure to appear, and before Dennison could open his mouth, she told the judge she never received the notice. Romeo stood, produced the delivery confirmation from his file, and handed up a copy with her signature on it. The judge looked at the paper, then looked at her, and said nothing at all. He did not scold her. He did not need to. He made a note, and I watched something get filed away behind his eyes. Dennison then asked for more time on the grounds that his client felt she needed different representation, and he said it like a man reading a sentence somebody else wrote. The judge granted a few weeks. Luna walked out of that room like she had won a war. Outside, Romeo put a hand on my shoulder and said, "That was courtesy, not permission." Judges give the difficult spouse one chance to get organized. One, she just spent it. In the weeks that followed, the texts kept coming, but the temperature was wrong. On a Tuesday, "You are going to regret this. When the judge hears my side, you will wish you had just paid me." An hour later, Dennison says I should settle. He has no idea what he is talking about. I should fire him. The next day, "Call me. We can still work this out. I will take 1.5. Final offer. For real this time." I read that last one sitting on my couch and felt nothing at all. No hope, no flicker, no small voice arguing that maybe this time was different. It was the same bait on the same hook on a different night. I did not answer any of them. I screenshotted all three and sent them to Romeo, and when he called the next morning, he sounded like a man watching his own forecast come true. He said 3 texts in 24 hours, threat, insult, and begging, each in a different voice. That is not somebody in control. That is somebody who can hear the clock. The final hearing was on a Tuesday. The day before, Romeo walked me through what the room would do. Income, assets, length of marriage, contributions. He said her share would land somewhere near 40%, give or take, and I did the arithmetic while he talked and felt it land. 40% was well under the 50-50 plus extra I had put on the table on day one, before the car, before the lump sum, before any of it. She could have taken my first offer, walked out with more money, no legal bills, and a year of her life back. Then Romeo said the only instruction that mattered: do not react in there. Whatever she says, let it go. The judge does not care about drama. The judge cares about numbers. The best thing you can be tomorrow is the reasonable person in the room. She will handle the rest herself. That evening, Oriana called. She was the one person who knew all of it. Every text and every offer, and every time Luna spit on one, because I needed exactly one person who knew everything, and she was it. She asked if tomorrow was the day, and I said it was. Then I told her something that surprised me while it was coming out. I said I felt guilty, not about the divorce, but because part of me wanted Luna to sit in that room and hear a number that made her sick. Oriana did not pause. She said, "That is not guilt. That is honesty. She held your entire life hostage for sport. You are allowed to want it to end in a way that means something." I did not sleep much. I lay in the dark, and the old texts ran through my head on a loop. "Enjoy being married to me forever, babe. Freedom costs $2 million. Make me an offer with a comma and 6 zeros." And somewhere around 2 in the morning, something surfaced that I had never put into words. In a full year of messages, Luna never once asked how I was doing. Not one text asking if I was okay, or how I was holding up, or how my day went. Every single message was about money or leverage, or reminding me she was living with Chul while I was still legally her husband. I had not been a person to her in any of it. I had been a transaction she was trying to close. In the morning, I put on a suit I had ironed the night before, ate 1 piece of toast because my stomach would not take more, and drove to the courthouse with the radio off. Romeo was in the lot with 2 coffees. He handed me one, looked at me and said, "You did not sleep." I said, "Not much." He said, "When one side refuses to negotiate in good faith, the court is not kind to them. Dennison knows that. He has probably told her. She has probably not listened." Luna was in the hallway with her arms crossed, dressed like the day was an occasion, wearing the expression I used to know so well, the one that said she was the smartest person in the building and everyone else was catching up. She mouthed something at me across 30 feet of tile. I did not try to read it. I walked past her into the room. Dennison stood first and talked about Luna the way you talk about someone who built a bridge. 8 years of marriage, sacrifice, her role in the household. He was careful enough never to say 2 million out loud, but he kept steering toward a lump sum well above anything the formula would produce, using words like significant and commensurate. The judge listened with his pen moving and gave away nothing. Then he looked up and asked one question in the flattest voice imaginable, like a man asking the time. He said, "On what legal basis are you requesting an amount above the standard division?" Dennison paused. 2 seconds maybe. In a room that quiet, 2 seconds is an hour. He said his client had been emotionally invested, that her life had been disrupted. insisted that she had maintained the home. The judge nodded once and said, I understand the argument. I am asking for the legal basis. Is there a prenuptial agreement specifying this amount? A postnuptial agreement? Any written contract? Dennison said no. No prenup, no postnup. Nothing on paper anywhere promising her $1 above the formula. The judge wrote something down, said, noted, and moved on. And I felt a fist that had been closed in my chest for a year start to open. Romeo stood next. He did not make a speech, and he did not try to make her look bad. He walked the judge through income records and shared assets and the standard division, dry and fast, because none of it was complicated. Then he reached into his folder and took out the very first settlement I ever offered, the 50-50 plus extra, and handed it up. He said, this is what my client voluntarily offered before any court involvement. It exceeds the standard division considerably. The judge read it. Then Romeo took out one more page, and I knew what it was before it cleared the folder. The same document returned with $2 million across the top in red marker. Romeo said, this is how his wife responded. The judge held one page in each hand for a long moment and said absolutely nothing. He did not have to. Then he set them both down, turned toward her table, and said, Ms. Unger, were you offered this settlement? She stood up before Dennison could reach for her arm. She said, yes, he offered me that, but it was insulting. I gave him 8 years, 8 years of my life. I cooked, I cleaned, I supported him while he worked all the time. $2 million is what I am owed. She delivered it loud, the way she used to argue with me, like volume made a thing more true. The judge's expression did not move. He asked, and did you also receive an offer of $1.5 million? She stopped. She looked at Dennison, then back up and said, that was a trick. He was trying to lowball me. The judge tilted his head slightly and said the last thing anyone said before the ruling. It was shaped like a question, and it was not one. So you were offered well above the standard division, declined it, and are now asking this court to award you a larger amount with no contractual basis. She opened her mouth. Dennison put a hand on her arm, firm, and whatever she saw on his face, closed it. Then the judge read the ruling out. Standard division, based on earnings, contributions, length of marriage. He said my share, he said hers. Her number came in noticeably below the offer I had handed her for free a year earlier, before a single legal fee, and the room stayed dead quiet while it settled. I kept my hands flat on my knees and did not look at her. She stared at the page he was reading from with her mouth slightly open, then turned to Dennison and said, loud enough for everyone, this is a joke. He offered me way more than this before. You told me to hold out. You said I had leverage. Her voice cracked on the word leverage like she was hearing how it sounded for the first time. Dennison leaned in and whispered something. Romeo told me later what it was. He said, I told you the opposite every time. You did not listen. Then the judge signed the papers. Luna did not sign anything. She did not need to. That was the entire thing she had built a year of games on top of, and it took the judge about 4 seconds with a pen that was not hers. I walked out with Romeo and stopped in the hallway to breathe. He shook my hand and said, she spent a year and her own legal fees chasing $2 million and ended up with less than you handed her for free on day one. That is what happens when somebody mistakes stubbornness for strategy. I drove home with the windows down. At a red light, my phone buzzed once. 3 words from her. This is not over. I blocked the number at the light and put the phone face down. A few weeks later, Oriana called to tell me she had heard through mutual friends that Chul had moved out. He had been living there the whole time, believing he was with a woman about to collect $2 million. And when what actually arrived was an ordinary settlement with a year of legal bills stapled to it, he was gone inside a week. Luna lost the marriage, lost the money she never had a claim to, lost the man she left me for, and paid a lawyer a fortune to sit beside her while all of it happened. I unpacked in my new place that Sunday. The red marker was still in the drawer by the sink, cap missing, dried out. I dropped it in the trash and shut the drawer.